Find the diagonal of the rectangular prism. Enter the exact answer and include units. So here you can see the diagonal going from this corner down to this corner here. We want to know that distance. So basically we're going to apply the Pythagorean theorem a couple times. Once to figure out this side length here, and the other one to figure out the diagonal here. You see, the thing is, on this bottom part, or the base, we have 8 by 4 for the legs of the right triangle, but we don't know this hypotenuse that is also forming the other right triangle. So we're going to need to solve for this guy first, and then we can use that information to figure out the diagonal. So let's go ahead and apply the Pythagorean theorem. 4 squared plus 8 squared equals c squared. So let's simplify. 4 times 4 is 16, plus 8 times 8, which is 64, equals c squared. And 16 plus 64 is 80, so 80 equals c squared. And that means c, this distance right here, that's the hypotenuse of the 8, 4 right triangle, is going to be radical 80, because you take the positive square root to figure out this hypotenuse. Okay, now the thing is, not only is this thing a hypotenuse, it's also a leg of this other triangle that's going vertically. And you have 5 inches for the height here, and we know this is now radical 80 for sure. So we're going to apply the Pythagorean theorem again to this triangle that's vertical and solve for the diagonal length for this rectangular prism. Okay, so here we go. It's going to be 5 squared plus radical 80 squared equals, and we'll use d, I mean really it's the hypotenuse, but since you have a label of d here, we'll just go with that, d squared. So let's simplify. 5 squared, 5 times 5 is 25. Now radical 80 squared. Let me show you how this works out. You have radical of 80 times radical 80, or square root 80. Let me show you a smaller number example, see if we can make some sense out of this. Square root of 2 times square root of 2 is the square root of 4, which of course is 2. And you can apply this pattern to any square root. So square root of 80 times square root of 80 is the square root of 6400, which is going to be 80 again. So all that means is this square root of 80 and then square it is just 80. So plus 80 equals d squared. And 25 plus 80, that's 105. And we're looking for the exact answer here and include units. So let's take the positive square root here. That's the distance d. Now our answer, we have to make sure we include units. It's square root of 105 and it's inches. Now I know this is a little more than 10 because square root of 100 is 10. So I'm thinking this is roughly around 10.1, 10.2 inches, something like that, and you could verify with a calculator. It is important when you're entering an exact radical answer, you still, in your mind, convert it to a decimal to get a sense of how big the number is, and you know if it makes sense. I mean, here we have a 4 by 8 by 5, and so a little over 10 inches kind of makes sense for this diagonal. If we got an answer of, say, 100 inches, we would know something is off because 100 inches doesn't make sense for this shape. Very important point that when you're finishing these up, you think about the answer and make sure that it makes sense.